Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. If you're regular here, you know I review many photographic, audio and video related products. Now today we're looking at a camera lens that I recently purchased to complement my Canon RP. Also my Canon R10, which actually is filming up there. That's just getting a sort of a wide shot. I've got fitted to that today, my Canon 10-18 EFS lens via the EF to RF adapter. So that's on my Canon R10. Just so you guys and girls know, the R10 is Canon's new APS-C RF mount camera body. I'll put a link up here, I think it's up here, to my initial thoughts of the Canon R10. But the more I use it, the more I love it, and it's a great camera. Well, today we're talking about a lens that I'm using with my Canon RP. Now, I've had the RP for quite a long time. I haven't used it a lot. I'm using it a lot more now because I've got better lenses for it. And it's great when you've got the right lenses for the right camera body. And this lens works beautifully with the RP, mainly because of its compact size. Now it's a 16mm, we're looking at the Canon RF 16mm STM lens, f1.8 STM lens. And it's fabulous. It's really compact, really fabulous value for money. And it's an ultra wide lens. So that's great on this camera body. I can leave it on it and get some really nice ultra wide images. And a great thing as well, because it's a 26 megapixel sensor in this body, I can actually crop in. I wouldn't want to crop in incredibly tight, but you'll see some of the images where I've cropped in actually quite considerably, and the results are still beautiful. They're really good. Now, I would highly recommend you take a look at these images rather than studying them on my YouTube channel. I will show you a few, but take a look at them on my Flickr page. That would be ideal because you can study them much better on Flickr. The image quality will be better and they won't be highly compressed like they are on my YouTube video. I'll leave a link in the description to my Flickr page where you can take a look at them. And I think you'll be really, really impressed with how good this lens is and how great value this lens is. As I said, 16mm ultra wide. On the Canon R10, that's effectively 25mm. It's about 25mm. So it's not ultra wide, but still wide enough. And the fact that it's an f1.8 aperture is great because it works great in low light and you can get bokeh. It's not a bokeh lens because it's a wide angle lens. But if you've got something close, close to the lens, then you can get lovely bokeh with this particular lens. And I'll show you again, I will show you some examples of how that works. Now, it is compact. There's no weight to it at all. I will put in the description what the weight is. I mean, it's about 165 grams. So, no weight to this lens at all. It's the RF mount, so it won't work on your Canon EF bodies, your DSLR bodies. It is totally designed for the new, well, I say new, the RF mount's been around a few years now, but it's totally designed for Canon's RF mount as opposed to the EF mount, which is their mirrorless mount, and fits on there beautifully. The RP actually is a really compact and a really, really nice camera to use. I shall leave again a link up here or up here to my initial thoughts of the RP, and it's about a year old, that video now, so take a look at that video, what I thought of it a year ago. A year on, I'm really, really loving it. It's lovely and compact. The only slight criticism I have with it, it hasn't got image stabilization in the body. You're reliant on image stabilization in the lens. Although, ironically, this particular lens hasn't got image stabilization either. It would be a bigger lens and it would be more expensive if it did have image stabilization in the lens. So I'm quite happy that it hasn't got it. Also, being that it's an ultra wide angle lens, you don't have to be too concerned about not having image stabilization in. I've been able to get down to about 1/20th of a second and still get sharp images. And I think that's pretty impressive on a full frame body. On my Canon R10, it would be much the same. I think it's about 1/20th of a second I'm getting on my R10. Obviously, if you bought something like the R7, which is another APS-C body, you can get slower shutter speeds because that has got in-body image stabilization. Or the R6, the R5, the R3, and so on and so forth. But the entry-level RP hasn't got the image stabilization, but it works great on here. The lens has got function control here. It's two positions. Now it's got this focus wheel on the front. Now this here can either be used for manual focusing or it can be used as a control ring, and you just switch it on this switch here. Focus position, so you can use it for manual focusing. Switch it over, and then you've got it used as a control ring. But it did confuse me actually, because when I put it into manual focus, the lens still doesn't manually focus. You still have to set it in the camera body to manual focus. And I find that annoying. And in fact, other reviewers have said the same thing. Why can't, the minute you switch it over to manual focus, the body goes into manual focus? That would be logical, but it doesn't. You have to also set it in the camera body to manual focus. But it is a dual control ring, so you can either use it for manual focus, or you can use it as a control ring, and it will control exposure compensation, aperture. I've got it set for controlling my ISO, so I just have to turn that and I can change the ISO. I normally leave it on auto ISO, but there are some times when the auto ISO gets fooled, and I'm happier turning it to manual ISO. So it's nice that it's on a ring that I can either use auto or manual. So we'll take a quick look at some of these images on the computer, but you are certainly best off looking at them on my Flickr page. I say the description for that will be, well, the link to that will be in the description below. Now, this lens does suffer with distortion and vignetting. Vignette, I can't say the word, you know, darkened corners. But in JPEGs, the camera actually corrects for those issues when you shoot in JPEG. Now, I shoot JPEG and RAW. Now, it depends on the software you're using, whether it will automatically correct for those that distortion and vignetting. If it doesn't do it, you need to do it manually. Now, in Lightroom, I've got it set to automatically, when I import the images, correct for that distortion. But I'll show you what I mean. You can do it manually. It doesn't really make any difference. Once you have corrected the distortion, the lens is brilliant. You get some awesome results. As I said, I've got it set up automatically to correct for it. But let's just pick anything. So if we go into that. So now I've got these images imported in Lightroom. I've got them ticked for Lightroom to do the corrections, but you can actually manually correct the images if you so wish to do so. So if we look at distortion here, we can bring the distortion right back, and you see we've got vignetting dark corners. And then you can do really crazy stuff with it. Same with the vignetting. You can see here really dark corners, and you can bring back that, you know, so there is no vignetting. You can also go doing it manually. You can adjust all the chromatic aberration. You can make adjustments to the distortion, so on and so forth for vignetting. So you've got, in RAW, if you're shooting RAW, you've got full control over how you want the end result to look. And I think that is great. But as I say, I've got it ticked so that it automatically does those corrections. I don't have to think about it. And the JPEGs automatically do those corrections anyway. Now, if you're using the 16mm lens on an APS-C body, you don't have to worry about that, because it's not using the full width of the sensor. It's only, these effects only occur if you're using this 16mm lens on something like the Canon RP, the Canon R, the R5, so on and so forth. So let's have a quick look at, let's just go through a few images with the corrections applied. We don't really need to apply them. So you can see this image here has been taken at its widest aperture, which is f2.8. Even at 2.8, the maximum aperture is great, so you can use it in low light, and you can get a little bit of bokeh, and quite a bit of bokeh if the subject is quite close to the front element of the lens. But you get lovely sharpness, and that's why I like using this lens, because I can keep it on the camera body or pretty much all the time. I love the images that come off it. The colours are great, the definition is great, the sensor in the RP I think it's great. I know there have been many people criticise its dynamic range, but if you get the exposure near enough right from the start, then you've got no problem with dynamic range. You know, I do really think it works great. You know, it's in all these images here. I'm just spinning through them. You know, you can't complain about the sharpness of this lens. And you'll be able to blow these images up really high if you were doing large prints. You'd have no problem with that at all, you know. And this computer's actually handling these images quite well, even though they are 26 megapixel full frame image, you know. It's loading them quite nicely. Again, lovely sharpness, lovely colours. Yeah, as I say, take a look at these on my Flickr page, but I think it's a great lens to add to your system bag if you're a Canon user, if you're a Canon mirrorless user. As I said earlier, they won't work on the Canon DSLRs, they only work on the Canon mirrorless bodies, but again, you see the dynamic range there is fine, you know, and the clarity, the sharpness is really good. I like wide angle lenses and I like ultra wide, you know. I think that they're great. So yeah, there we go. That's just a run through of some of the images taken with the Canon RF 16mm lens, and I think it's a great buy. It works great on the RP. It's a nice feel to it. It's a nice size. It's not too heavy, and if you can work around the characteristics of this lens, particularly the distortion and the vignetting. So if you can work around the characteristics of this lens and you have no issues with its distortion and vignetting, then that's great. So, I mean, JPEGs come out perfectly anyway, so you've got no problem using JPEGs. And if you're a RAW shooter, just, use software that either automatically corrects the distortion, or like I showed you in Lightroom, you can manually correct it if you so wish to do so. And you've got a cracking lens, and I think value for money, it's pretty much identical size to the 50mm. So you can't see it on the camera body, but if I take it off the camera body, you'll see the resemblance between this and the 50mm. The 50mm is a 1.8 lens, and that is also fabulous value for money. If I take that off, you can see, that came off quick. You can see there, they're almost, well, they are pretty much identical in size. You can see that they're pretty much identical in size between the 16mm and the 50mm. They've both got your control ring and they've both got your switch on the side for setting it for either control ring or manual focus. So yeah, great lenses and produce great results, and you don't have to spend a fortune on them. What I like about it as well, using it on my RP, on my R10, I use it for video on my R10 because of being a 25mm lens. That gives me, a really nice wide angle for here in the studio without it being ultra wide, and that is a great advantage for video because I can use it as a third angle, just overlooking, the whole thing that I'm shooting. So there we go. That's just a quick look at the Canon RF 16mm lens used with my Canon RP and my Canon R10. So I can highly recommend the lens if you're looking at a wide angle lens or ultra wide angle lens for your Canon system. I think that would be a fabulous investment. I really do, and it's just nice and light. So there we go. Thanks very much for watching. If you found this review useful, please hit the like button. Really would appreciate that. And subscribe if you haven't already done so. That helps me grow the channel. And I really appreciate everyone who has subscribed. It means a lot to me, helps me grow the channel. So thanks very much for watching. Stay tuned for more videos related to video photography, podcasting, audio gear, so on and so forth. Cheers for now. Bye.